Can everyone hear me?
Everything okay? Okay, dogs, you guys need to go somewhere else. My dogs want to be a part of the meeting too.
She has a lot. They have a lot to say.
Yes, they always do. Well, welcome. It looks like I have Francisco, Monica, Stacy, and Shannon, right?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So, well, people will join us as they can. That would be great. So, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. What? Oh, okay. Yeah, technology. And are we recording?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So, you don't need to see my lovely face, but if you haven't need to see my face.
Oh, do you want to turn your face on?
I'd like to see their faces.
Oh, their faces are up to them.
Okay. Okay. Well, I saw Stacy's face anyway.
If you want faces on.
Uh-oh, how do I do this? Let me see.
If you want faces on.
Yeah.
You want.
There. Okay. All right. And I think we're welcoming another person right now. Anyways, we shall, this is a new way of doing this kind of a training for me. So I'm hoping it works for everybody. It's up to you. But what we're going to do is I'm going to go through kind of an overview of what we're going to discuss just this session, and each session will be doing something different. I want you to have the opportunity to ask questions anytime you want to. But if you have background music or anything going on in your setting, if you could mute yourself until you're ready to say something, that would be fantastic.
I'll probably do that then. Sorry about that.
That's fine. I can't hear anything.
Oh, okay.
But I know my dogs can go crazy sometimes, but I can't really exactly mute me.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's fine. So Travis, how do I make it go forward?
Arrow keys.
Arrow keys. It's not doing anything. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you an overview of what EDU-Ther-A-Play is and kind of the history of that. The key elements of EDU-Play. Today we're going to talk about working with families because we tend to have families that ask you questions all the time, right? So you want to be prepared to know how to answer them. Ooh, I noticed I spelled communication wrong. But we're going to talk about play, really, really important, and we're going to touch on communication. And I think that's as far as we're going to get tonight because I want to hold it to an hour. But then I know most of you are very interested in the behavior modules. Am I correct on that? Yeah, I kind of thought so. So we're going to spend some real time doing that too. Come on in, Jennifer. Just added Jennifer and Danielle is there. So welcome everybody. So let me tell you a little bit about where EDU-Ther-A-Play came from. In the past, somebody's skipping.
Uh-oh.
Might be Jennifer. Jennifer,
Hey,
can you hear me?
yeah, what's up? Do you want me to mute my?
Mute unless you have questions. Yeah.
Perfect.
Let's see if that's
came
you. Ah, that was you. Okay. So in 1998, when I started the program, I was basing it on things I had learned over many years about how I wanted to be working with children with disabilities. And I studied a lot of the theorists from all the way from, Freud, who has very little part of this, but to Piaget, Stanley Greenspan, who's a floor time person, a whole bunch of other people. And if you want any of that data or information, if you're interested in that kind of research, I have it all. But I'm not going to go into all of the details of it tonight. It's really important to me that when we're working with families, we're looking at them as partners in what is best for their child. And that, in my opinion, the best way to do that, especially with young children, but actually it doesn't matter how old you are, through relationship and through play. And in doing that, and bringing all of that together, I came up with the term with another person who's been one of my muses, I guess you can say, over the years, Elaine Hall. She's from the Miracle Project. And we came up with EDU-Play. So for many, many years, we called what we're doing is EDU-Play, until I was told that it was copyrighted. I couldn't, I'm moving you, I'm sorry. And so that doesn't work either. You're just gonna have to look at my funny face. So I started researching other names, and I was able to come up with EDU-Ther-A-Play, and that has been copyrighted and trademarked now. So that is what we base step-by-step practice on, is that. Now the key, I'm gonna go into the, I just went over that, so I can go over, okay, Travis. I am so technologically challenged. Okay, is that where I wanted to go? Okay, so we kind of talked about, how important the family role is in, well, I figured it out. Okay, so come do it with me. But when we develop a plan for a child, we need to be able to plan it, and it has to be tailored on what works with the family. Because if you think about it, we can develop a plan, a program for a family, and if they don't like it, or if it doesn't work into their family culture or their situation, it's not going to be implemented, whether it's in the home or for many of you, we do social skills together. If you're not listening to what the family is able to do, it's not going to happen. So we believe that families are the most important influence in the child's development and social emotional well-being. So we incorporate the family values. And so that what that may mean is, let somebody else in. What that may mean is, if we have a family that insists that you take off your shoes when you come into their home, we want to know that, and we want to respect that. We also want to make sure that we're respecting the culture of their home as well. So if you're in a home, whoever's got background noise on, could you please mute yourself for right now? Thank you. So we want to be able to listen to what the family needs. We want to make sure that we're going in and assuring that when we're coming into their home, that we're coming in looking professional. We want to make sure that we're, this may sound interesting and funny, but fragrance neutral. And we want to make sure that we're clean, and the materials we bring into their home or to the park or wherever we're going are clean and sanitary. And by that may look like some people will go into the homes and they'll, before they get started, they'll ask to use the bathroom so that they can wash their hands, or they may have wipes where they sanitize the toys or equipment that they're working with, either before or after the session, so the family knows that, we're taking caution with their family and children as well. We also try as much as we possibly can to include the other professionals in the children's lives. So if the children are receiving physical, occupational, speech therapy or other types of therapies, Even sometimes children are receiving things that aren't like common therapies, such as maybe they're getting acupuncture, or maybe they're doing some sort of herbal treatments or things like that. We don't make a judgment about what it is that they're doing or using. What we do want to know is, what is the plan, and how do we support the family's plan? In other words, if we go in with to work with a family, and our goal may be to help the child to be able to communicate their wants and needs. Somebody needs to mute.
Okay. What is the plan?
I think that's you, Stacy. I think I recognize your voice. So we want to make sure that that we're. Now I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Make sure that we're following whether the family.
Oh, so if the plan is that the child's goal is to communicate a want or need, what are other people in their lives doing to work on that same thing? So if the physical therapist is working on something that is like reaching for an activity and it's motor related, we want to make sure that we're listening to what the physical therapist or the occupational or the speech therapist is saying, and try to support that. We might not do it the same way, but we do want to support the ultimate goal. And we're going to share the ways that we're doing it as well. So we want to make sure that we're collaborating partners. I can't read that. Okay. Oh, yeah, unless one of those things is actually harming the child in any way, form. So if we know that somebody's using some sort of an illegal treatment, then we need to report that to Child Protective Services. We also need to talk to the family and say, you know, have you researched this? Is this safe for the child, or whatever it happens to be? Travis, it is not moving forward. Oh, I got it. I'm sorry. I did not mean to do that. So the key components of and values of, ooh, I didn't change that from EDU-Play to EDU-Ther-A-Play. Sometimes I still get messed up on that. Are relationship development and maintenance with the family, child, caregivers, and other team members. So that's kind of what we were just talking about. But whenever you're working with a family and child, in whatever program at Step by Step we're doing, these methods and values go across all of our programs. We want to make sure that we're developing a healthy relationship with the family, and but not a familial relationship. So what we want to be able to do is have the appropriate boundaries with the family, but we also want to make sure that we're honoring, like I said before, their values, but also developing a relationship with the family. Oh yeah, I have a lot of typos in there. And with the caregivers and other people in their lives. We want to make sure it's developmentally appropriate. And I'm going to spend some time talking about this in a few minutes, because one of the key elements to what we do is really understanding where children are in their development, not where they are chronologically, but where they are in their development. So I will come back to that.
Before we move on, I'm trying to see if everyone's video is.
Everybody can see what's the screen?
Yes.
If you're having any problems, you can either let us know, or you can give us a, yeah, somebody's got their microphone on. Okay. So anybody that's not on mute, just mute unless you have a question. Unmute yourself when you have a question, or if I ask you a question. We want to make sure that we're following the child's lead. Now, I know that kind of sounds funny sometimes, because if they're doing something inappropriate, obviously we don't want to follow their lead. But what we do in developing the relationship and working with practices is really following what the child is doing in order to understand what they're doing. So, for instance, if a child is doing a perseverative activity, maybe laying on the ground and rolling a car back and forth, and we're going, okay, well, that's kind of strange. I'm not sure if she should be doing that, and I'm not sure that that is a meaningful or good activity. I don't know. I don't know what the meaning is behind that. So the first thing I want to do is get on that child's level with them and do what they're doing. See if I can figure out what it is that they're getting from that activity, and what need is it meeting, and am I able to get what we call joint attention with the child. And I think some of you have practiced some of these things in social skills, but I will do a video next week for you so you can kind of see what that looks like as well. We want it to be play-based, fun, non-intrusive, respectful, adaptable, meaningful, and measurable. The key behind our way of treatment is that my belief is that our children, oh, that's great, Travis. The children that we work with work so hard in school and in the different therapies that they're participating in. We don't want to be just one more of those therapies that's making them sit down and work. We want to be play-based as much as we possibly can, and play carries out through the lifespan. It's not just for children. Play, we all need to play. Excuse me. We want it to be fun. Sometimes we need to insist that children complete an activity, but we want to end it on a positive note as much as we possibly can. We're not going to force a child to do anything. If a child is going to have a meltdown, temper tantrum, we're not going to force them to do an activity that is it's going to create more negative than positive outcomes. Now, saying that, there will be times when children need to do things like, if you need to change well, it would be the parents, but if the diaper needs to be changed, or if they need to put on their shoes because it's wet outside, but there are ways we can get around that to make it a more appropriate activity. We want to be observant of verbal and nonverbal communication. And I'm going to spend next week on behavior. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. For the family and for the child, we want to model and coach appropriate behavior. Our goal is to teach the family and the children the things that they need to learn in order to be successful. But we also need to be able to model appropriately, but we also need to be able to let go. So it's like, we don't need to own the activities. We don't need to own the theory. We want to give it away. We want to tell the families, here are some ideas on how things can go. Let me show you how to do it so that you can be an effective coach for your child, an effective parent for your child, and that eventually you won't need us any longer. Our goal is to put ourselves out of that particular family's situation. We want to make sure that before you go into a session and after the session, you do your own awareness. When you're going, if you've just been driving down the street and somebody cut you off and you're all pissed off, we want you to check that at the door, because you know how the children are. They will react to negative energy and negative attitude coming in. But they also will react very positively to a positive attitude. So we ask that you do a self-reflection before and after you start a session with a family and child.
Thank you, Travis.
Pardon me? Did somebody have a question? No? Okay. Yeah, which can also come into, let's say that you come into the house and the family has had a really rough day, and maybe the parent is irritable or something like that, and you can see that it is affecting the child as well. So I think it's important to, be able to just kind of be aware of that and reflect on that as much as you can. And then on this final note on this section is we're going to talk more about, as we move forward, about what appropriate reflective and supportive supervision is. Some people are resistant to supervision, and it is not intended to be critical of you at all. It is intended to support you, to support the family, and to support the child. So if you ever feel that when your supervisor comes in on a visit or gives you any kind of feedback, it is not intended ever to be a negative experience. It's really just to be supportive. And the person that's supervising you should never be coming in and giving you negative feedback in front of a family or coworkers. So we want to make sure that you know that, you know, as far as supervision goes, it's supposed to be a benefit to you, not a negative. We say each family and child is unique with its own concerns, priorities, and resources. And we call that its concerns, priority, and resources for coping, but I should have put the initials there, we call that their CPR. So it's kind of their lifeline. How do they come into the situation? Especially with our younger children, what we see a lot is that we are sometimes the first or of the first providers with the young families, and they've just received a diagnosis. They're not quite sure what it means. It may be, you know, it could be autism, and autism is as big as an umbrella, as you know, or it could be some other genetic or learning disability, or it could be a number of things that the family is learning to cope with. So it's important for you to learn as much as you can about the children that you're working with prior to going in, to know about what that individual child's diagnosis looks like, what the diagnosis that you're working with looks like in general, but also what are the different kinds of techniques that you can use with that child. And we have a whole session on that will be going on in the future. Again, excuse me, I'm going to cough. Would you get me a water? Yeah. Families, you know, are there that we call the families the marathon runners, and we're the sprinters in their lives. All of the professionals that come and go with families are there for, you know, basically a short period of time. And so we hand the baton off either to another therapist or another type of service, or possibly even we say you don't need us anymore. And there's no better feeling than being able to do that as well. Relationships are the foundation for learning and appropriate neurological, physical, and mental development. So we count on kind of a stasis of our own foundation to be able to learn. In other words, if you're in a school situation for yourself, let's say you're going to take a class and you go into the class and there is, you know, it's a kind of a negative experience, or you're feeling like you're underprepared for it, it sets your whole body and your whole neurological system up to be in a stress situation. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring that for yourself as well. We're the mirrors. And if any of you have listened to or learned about mirror neurons, is everybody hearing me okay? My internet said it's unstable. If anybody's having a problem, yell out. Looks like everybody's okay. So mirror neurons are the way that children learn, and actually the way that we relate to one another. We tend to check in visually, physically with other people, and we tend to look at what they're doing in order to react to what we want to do. So when you're with another, like if you're with a peer and you're walking down the street, you might look to the side to check in with your peer, to check in to see, are they still connected to me? Are we still together? So mirror neurons for children with disabilities is something that is more difficult, but it's something we strive for, and we'll spend more time on that as well. Children learn best in familiar, consistent, emotionally supportive environments. I don't think I need to go further on that. Each child has unique learning styles and strengths, just as we do. Some of us are visual, some of us are tactile, some of us are auditory. We all learn in different ways. So we want to be observant with the children and also acknowledge our own way of learning, our own way of teaching. So if you are a person that you noticed when you were in school, you like to take notes, and that's the way your brain kind of remembered things, you would probably be both a tactile and a visual learner. If you just can't write while you're listening, you're probably an auditory learner. You could be mixed in all those other things. And there's another set of studies, that Gardner's multiple intelligence, that might be of interest to you, that I can share information with you as well. And then I just really encourage you to always hone your skills. These skills that you are learning in EDU-Ther-A-Play with step-by-step, you can ask anybody that's been working with us for a long time, have helped with their own parenting skills when they have children, have helped in relationships with other people, and are important skills that actually everybody can use, but will help you in other career pursuits that you have as well. Okay. I do want to check in. Can I check in with, is this pictures for a second? I want to see people again. Talking, okay. Okay, I just want to check in with people and make sure everybody that's here is getting what they need. If you have any questions, this is a good time to ask. You can unmute yourself. And
I
if
don't
there
have any questions yet, but this is good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That to know you are alive. Just wanted to make sure, because it's very silent on my side over here, so I wasn't sure.
No
Okay.
I've been taking notes, basically.
That's fine. That's fine. So, but you can always butt in if you need to. Feel free. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to put you guys away again. The shrink button. Let's continue. Okay. Did I get to the right one, or did I skip too far forward? I skipped too far forward. Okay, now, okay, back one. Okay, we hold the belief that the best interventions are in the home and with his or her caregiver. We really want our families to be empowered to understand and be able to work with their children. Some children are receiving between 20 and 30 hours of school per day. On top of that, sometimes 3 or 4 hours of other individualized therapy, possibly social skills with us, possibly behavior intervention up to 20 or 30 hours on top of that. There's no downtime for some of these kids. So we want to make sure that when we're working with them, we're giving them as true a life experience as we can. If you're going into a session, whether it's social skills or behavior intervention, behavior respite, or personal attendance, I think it's really important to try to build in a naturalistic learning situation. So you're not necessarily going in and saying, I've got a 2-hour session and I've got 15 things I want to do. You may have that on your list of that, but I encourage you to do an ebb and flow of what is natural. If somebody asked you to go and work in a classroom, for instance, let's say that you're in a college classroom and you're told to go and this classroom and sit for 2 hours. It's very hard to do for us as adults to sit even for 2 hours. Now we're asking kids to do this whole day long thing, and then we're asking them on top of that now to do these tasks that we want them to do. So what we want to be able to do is what we call, and I have to come up with a better name for it, but for for the purposes of this training, we call it 20-20-20. So you've got 60 minutes in an hour. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes, but it's kind of a third, a third, a third. If you do an activity, what we like to do is go in and do a child-led activity first. What would you like to do? Building the relationship, building rapport, and then go into my turn to direct an activity, and then possibly a sensory or another activity of your choice. And I'll give you some demonstrations of that later. But for right now, what you want to be able to do is give some natural breaks in your sessions. If a child, needs to get up and wiggle with them. Join them in their silliness. And then I talked about supervision already. You don't need to sacrifice structure after what I've just said to provide a responsive learning environment. So what I mean is have your structure that makes you comfortable, but try to build in structured unstructure, for a lack of a better word, building in levels of intensity of what you are expecting from the family and child. So anyways, I can go into more detail on that later if you like. Every child is a member of a family, and a family is how they define themselves. And as you all know, in today's culture, a family can be as broad as the horizon. It can be mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, grandfathers, conservators, all kinds of other things. Are people waiting to get on? What was that? I'm sorry, excuse me for a second. Chats? Oh, somebody has questions. Okay. The sound's breaking up a bit. It just froze. Uh-oh. Hey, quick question. For 20-20-20 model, 20 is child-led, 20 is BI-led, and what is the other 20? It's breaks? I think I missed that. Danielle, let me see if I can understand. Let me see if I can explain that better. It's not cut and dry. It's more of segment, segment, segment. It's some children are going to be able to handle 5 minutes of a non-preferred task and 10 minutes of a preferred task. So it doesn't have to be solid. What it is it's kind of giving different segments to what you're doing. I know that in behavior intervention, you get a list of goals that you're working on, and you're trying to address those goals during your session. And so it may break up as go, 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 if that's what you need to look at. But it's more like giving them the natural breaks. I'm hoping that helps to explain it. If it doesn't, let me know, and I'll keep on looking at the questions now. And I'm. Yeah. Respect. I really can't say enough how important it is that you respect the families and the decisions that they make in directing their program. Yeah, and the family culture. But it's also really important for you to feel that you can express from a professional point of view what you're bringing to the table. So you don't have to go in when the family says, well, and we've had this happen on some occasions, the family will say, I don't like it when, well, the example of something that happened last week, I don't like it when you don't let her have the toy she wants. And the interventionist may say something like, I understand that, because it makes her upset, and acknowledge the emotion behind what's going on, because it's a lot of times it's the family, just they don't want their child upset because their child is special and they think that they should be able to do what they want to do. So in the moment, I'm not going to correct anything, but after the session, I may want to set up a meeting with the family and say, I just want to talk to you about what it is you want for your child. How would you like to get past this particular issue.
If you're uncomfortable talking to the family,
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
What did Travis say? Because I couldn't hear him.
Oh yeah, he's kind of on the other side of the room. So what he said was, if we're talking to a family and they have a concern about a way that we're doing an intervention, or they don't want their child upset, I wouldn't correct in the moment. And what Travis says is, if you're not sure how to deal with this, you can certainly sit down with your supervisor and they can give you the tools to do this, or can model it for you as well, or speak directly with the family on your behalf if that's what you like. But I want to empower you to be able to be the professional and take the lead with this, but not when you're not comfortable with it. I want you to feel comfortable with it as well. Does that answer your question? I think that was
Perfectly, yeah.
okay. Thanks, Shannon. I thought that was you.
Yeah.
I recognized you.
Oh, good.
Okay, so, and we talked about this a little bit before. Stress. You feel stress as a new person going into the home. You feel like, you know, you may or may not be prepared for what's going on with the family, and the family is in the same situation. They have a level of stress of somebody either coming into their home or doing something with their child. They need to build trust and faith in you, as well as you building your own faith in yourself. And then we can help them to, one of the key things with a child with a disability, it may be a temporary disability, it may be a lifelong disability. We don't know. But what we want to assist in, and this is the relationship piece, is accepting the child for who they are right now, with the hopes of providing them with the tools to be the most possible person that they can be, but that who they are is not a broken child. Who they are is a wonderful, you know, family member and a person that needs to be treated with dignity and respect. Okay. Play, my favorite part. Okay, I'm giving you a couple of examples right now because I feel like I've been heavy for the past 35 minutes, and I want to give you a little bit of lightness as well. Play is everything. Play is communication, play is behavior. To me, play is the way to live. So I'm giving you a couple of examples of some things that are simple everyday activities that you probably have, but I want you to know how they affect each child. So like Play-Doh or water or a tactile table promotes tactile exploration. Well, yeah, duh. But it also provides an opportunity to see how the child reacts to a tactile situation. It may be avoidant. It may be exciting. It may be a number of things, and the thing that you will find out is what is your own tactile exploration ability. I worked with some people that they can't touch Play-Doh or rice in goopy stuff or stuff like that. It's just too hard for them. Okay, so what does that mean for that person? Is it debilitating, or is it something that doesn't really affect their life at all? Well, if they're having feeding issues, if the child or if you happen to be sensitive to the certain textures in your mouth or on your skin, it very well could be that you have a tactile defensiveness, and that we can do some activities in different ways. Like for instance, Play-Doh can be a pretty intense smell and touch, but it might be that they're able to touch it with a tool. They might be able to put their hand in a glove and touch it. So we can see what level do we need to look at. Encourages fine motor. Poking, I will tell you right now, poking is a really important skill. I know that sounds crazy, but your pointer finger is one of the most important pieces of your body, because in order to do almost everything we do in everyday life, we have to use that pointer finger. So encouraging motor strength is really, really important. And then, of course, imagination, creativity, social, and language development. Easel work, and that can be, it doesn't have to be on an easel. It can be on something like you put a piece of paper on a fence or on a incline or whatever. It doesn't matter exactly where it is, but it really works on upper body and shoulder strengthening. Promotes fine motor, proper grasp, later for printing skills, and imagination and creativity. Manipulatives promote variety of fine motor, fosters eye contact, and eye-hand coordination, so incredibly important. Size, shape, so math, pre-math skills. I can't spell. Problem-solving skills and critical thinking, and blocks promote many of the same skills as well. Blocks are amazing, and they're amazing for all ages, and different kinds of blocks, small blocks, big blocks. You don't have to have the same kind of blocks together. You can have a Lego block with a wooden block. Is that, I don't know anything about Minecraft, and I'm not going into Minecraft tonight. Arts and crafts, all of these other explorations as well, again, size and volume, and you'll see almost everything promotes socialization and language skills, which is behavior and is coordination. Dress up, imaginative play, all of these different things. Treasure hunts are wonderful. Box play, and obviously some of these things are for younger children, but if you can think of expanding them, like obstacle courses. For a teenager, an obstacle course might be, how do we get to CVS? And what are the obstacles that will be in our way? For a very small child, an obstacle course may be, stepping over blocks. Climbing on the couch without jumping off. My own issue. Attention to tasks and turn taking. So all of those things are really critically important. Then I want to touch base a little bit on speech, language, ANO, communication. Boy, I need to go back over this. I don't know. My apologies for the screen errors. Okay, so speech and communication, speech, language, and communication, critically important for everyone, for everything. This is the way that we describe behavior. Behavior has a bad rap. Behavior is not a good or bad thing. It is just behavior. It's how we react to different things. And if we don't have the ability to react in what we call appropriate ways, then we are likely to act in inappropriate ways. So what we want to be able to do is provide opportunities for children to learn in a multimodal way how to communicate. And that might be using words, gestures, pictures, or PEC systems to be used in all environments to help the child understand the world around them. And we want to make sure that he's ready to use speech. Not all children are ready to use speech. And that comes back to what I'm going to touch on in a couple of minutes, is meeting the child developmentally where they are. Okay, and then these are some of the forms of communication. Nonverbal actions, grabbing, reaching, taking, giving. Not on here, but biting, pinching. Bodily contact, head nodding, facial expression. Proximity, moves closer, moves far away, turns away from you, gazes, cries, just a sec. Vocalizations, gestures, pointing, and then simple sign language. Yes, if you're going to speak, you need to speak loud.
Basically, everything a person does, any behavior is communicating something. Communicate. So just being aware that everything you do, every action,
Okay. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I didn't hear what Travis said. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that, please?
Sorry, everything you do, regardless of what you think it is communicating something.
So yeah, communication is behavior. Behavior is communication. So he was saying that even if you are drinking a glass of water, you're communicating you're thirsty, or you were thirsty, or you want water. And then we can build on those kinds of things as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Let's see. Okay, well, that's the end of the slide presentation, but I do want to talk a little bit about development now. So you don't need to necessarily be a child development specialist to understand development, but you do need to understand development to do behavior intervention, if you understand what I mean. So one of the things I think is critically important is to observe what typical development looks like. If you're working with a child under the age of 3, you need to understand what is expected of a typical 3-year-old, and then be able to analyze the data that we have and the reports that we have in order to meet the child where they are at developmentally versus chronologically. So what I mean by that is a lot of times, just take a typical kid, for example. You might have a typical 4-year-old, let's say a 4-year-old boy who is very small but very bright. And so if he's really small, what are you doing? Oh, okay. If he's a really small child, you may not expect as much of him, just because when we look at children, we kind of judge them by their size and what we think their age is. And conversely, when you're working with a 4-year-old child who may look like a 7-year-old child, we need to be careful, because we don't want to treat that 4-year-old child like a 7-year-old child if they're not developmentally at that stage. Yes.
Also recognizing when a child typical. Sometimes we working with our client, and we're working with 2-year-olds. 2-year-old is having a tantrum. Typical 2-year-olds.
Right. That's one of the things I think is incredibly important when we're, and same thing with almost any phase of development, is that we don't want to change or break the child's spirit if that's not their nature, and that we can take into consideration with the parents too. For instance, if you have a child who's very shy, are they shy? Are they developmentally delayed? What are the parents' temperaments like? If the parents are shy, then that may just be their personality trait. It's not something we need to go in and do an intervention for. So keeping that in mind alongside of development is that if we have a child that is 6 years old, but developmentally, based on the assessment material that we have, their communication skills, and this is kind of what I use as a guide, their communication skills, for whatever reason, are more like a 3-year-old, I'm going to start at a 3-year-old level expectation for behavior and communication. And I'm going to build up from that. So it's scaffolding, but it's where in some theories what we're doing is we're teaching to the task. We don't teach to the task necessarily, we teach to the development. So if we're presenting a child with a developmentally appropriate activity, it should not be overly frustrated. And I'd rather err on the side of just below their development than going too far above their development and causing frustration. So, for instance, if a child is interested in a puzzle of some sort, but the puzzle is too hard for them to complete, at this point, I want to kind of say, okay, well, this puzzle was designed for this age child, whatever it happens to be. What can we do with this puzzle? Maybe it's not a puzzle. Maybe it's just naming the animals on the puzzle and giving the sounds to the puzzle. And then I can put one in, they can put one in, if it's a shape puzzle. It gets more difficult with the more difficult tasks that we ask them to do. A lot of times the tasks that are actually testable tasks are not preferred activities. So what we want to be able to do is try to teach the task with preferable activities as much as we can, but we're still going to need to test with the non-preferred activity. And for some reason, kids hate stacking blocks that we want them to stack. They'll stack all the blocks that they want to stack at the way that they want to stack them. But if we say, oh, I want you to stack 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 2 blocks, 1 block on top of each other, they don't want to do that. But can they? Maybe they can, maybe they can't. So we want to be able to really look at that and meet them developmentally. Now, if you're not sure where the child is developmentally, we have reports. Every child has a report and has an assessment, so you should be able to gather that information. If it's not on hand right then when you need it, you can do a simple test. You can look at the child with the activity that you want to do, present it to them. If it's too hard, instead of pushing through, take it back a step, take it back a step, take it back a step. If it's too easy, take it up a step, take it up a step. You can almost always take any activity that you're doing and decrease the expectations or increase the expectations at least a little, maybe not to the level that you might want to, but you can kind of wing it a little bit, if that makes sense. So I want to ask you to think about, I'm not going to ask you to respond to me, I'm just going to ask you to think. Think about one of the children that you work with or that you have worked with in the past, and think about their chronological age to begin with. Okay, now I want you to think about, what do you know about their language development? Are they verbal? Are they nonverbal? Do they have the ability to put 2 words together, 3 words together? What do they do when they're upset? Are they able to communicate their emotions? Are they able to communicate their thoughts? Now, obviously, the younger children are not going to have the ability to do that because they haven't had that experience as much as some of the older children. But you want to be able to look at what it is that they are able to do to communicate their wants and needs, both in a non-stressful situation and in a stressful situation. So what we're doing is we're evaluating the stress response as well. So if I'm going to use you as an example now, you, the global you, all of you, to think about what is the most stressful situation you can think of. How do you react when you're in that heightened stressful situation and somebody asks you to complete a task that may or may not be related to what you're thinking? Oftentimes we get really upset. Sometimes we shut down and can't do the task. There are all kinds of different reasons and ways that we will react that may or may not be productive. And then if you switch that around and look at what is your almost exuberant feeling when you're just like on that ultimate high, you're feeling so good about things. So your stress is way down, but your emotions are very elevated. This can also cause you to not react appropriately. So it's important to think about what are the different emotional states that affect you. What are the most emotional states that affect the child as well? And that as you're moving through those should help you to kind of access the activities that you want to do with the child. I mean, we want to push the children, but we don't want to push them to a point of no return. And while we want to challenge so that we can address challenging behaviors, a better way to do that is actually to teach the coping skills before you kind of poke the bear. So that you're going to say, when, if you're, depending on the developmental level of the child, when you're mad because you don't want to go eat dinner, what can you say? I don't want to go eat dinner. You can say it with emotion. Mom, what can you say when he says that? And mom may come up with, in a time of non-threatening, might come up with, well, you know what? We have to have dinner so that we can do the rest of our day, or if you don't want to eat dinner now, you can eat dinner in 5 minutes. So giving mom coping mechanisms too, because the reaction is mom may be stressed out and she says in a normal situation, it's time to eat dinner, and nobody answers her. Nobody answers her. The kids don't come. Nobody comes to the table. And she says again, it's time for dinner. You need to come to the table. And with maybe a little heightened anxiety. And still nobody responds. So then she goes to the kids and she says, you need to come to the table now. I don't want to come to the table now. It doesn't matter what you want. I made dinner. It's on the table. You need to come to the table now. Well, now everybody's wound up and nobody's moving towards the table, probably. So if we can preempt it with some scripts almost, and very simple, and countdowns help, but one of the problems with countdowns is they add anxiety. Oh, preliminary things like, okay, we're having this, and this for dinner. I do not like broccoli. I don't want broccoli. Well, you know what? We'll put one piece of broccoli on your table. If you eat it, you eat it. If you don't, you don't. Okay. You've alleviated that, because the fact is if you put broccoli on the plate and you already know they're not going to eat it, you're not going to force them to eat it. You can't force kids to put into their body, and you can't force kids to put out of their body. And that's a whole nother topic of conversation. Well, yeah, but you can introduce things, you can encourage things, but you can't, I mean, yeah, people actually physically can force people to eat, but it's not a good idea. It doesn't accomplish anything behaviorally as well. Well, it causes more intense behaviors. Okay, we're coming up on an hour right now, and I want to give time to ask if anybody needs questions or clarifications on anything we've discussed. No questions? The other thing is, if you don't have any questions now and you want to email me later, that's fine. This was kind of an overview. We will be going into more depth in behavior next week and the following week. I will be sending those of you that have signed on some reading material. It's not mandatory reading material. It's just supportive information if you're interested. And if you're not interested, just ignore it. But it's if you're interested in this field as a profession, as really moving forward, a lot of this stuff is going to be helpful for you in everything that you do. Any other questions? No?
I just want to say I found the training very helpful. We're going to be given a copy so that we can reflect back to this.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've recorded the session, but also I'm going to send you some other information too. And certainly if you have any questions along the way, please. Yeah, I can get you a copy of the recording too.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Any other questions? All right. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Shelly.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Stacy.